Welcome to Gradia, a space where books meet betterment and growth begins with a single idea. Here you'll find AI-generated summaries of powerful self-help books, crafted to make timeless wisdom feel a little more accessible. But make no mistake, while AI helps shape these summaries, there's a real person behind every word you read. Someone who's been moved by these books, who's wrestled with their lessons, and who now shares them with one simple hope: that they help you grow too. We always encourage you to explore the original books and support the brilliant minds behind them. Gradia isn't a shortcut. It's a spark, a small light to guide you deeper into the ideas that can change everything. Let's grow, one page at a time.
Welcome back, everyone, to The Deep Dive. You know how much we love diving into books and really extracting those key ideas, and I'm so excited for this one. We're talking about leadership today.
Oh, yeah, this is going to be a good one. We're talking about entrepreneurial leadership specifically, that concept of manning up and really taking control and responsibility.
Right, and to guide our exploration, we're going deep into Bedros Keuilian's book, Man Up How to Cut the Bullshit. It's all about cutting through the noise and getting to the practical, actionable stuff.
And that's what we're all about here. No fluff, just the good stuff you can actually use. And Keuilian doesn't mess around. Like, his background's pretty interesting.
Yeah, the founder and CEO of Fit Body Bootcamp, super successful business consultant, investor. You know, his perspective comes from actually doing it right, living that immigrant edge, pursuing the American dream.
Totally. That whole actions speak louder kind of guy. And that's what makes this book so valuable, I think. It's not theory, it's about what actually works.
Exactly. So that's what we're here to do. Pull out those key principles of effective entrepreneurial leadership, those actionable insights that can make a difference without overwhelming you. Think of it as your shortcut to understanding what truly matters in leadership.
A roadmap to success, cutting out all the unnecessary detours.
Love that. Okay, so let's jump right in.
So the book kicks off with a really powerful section called The Wake-Up Call. It's this intensely personal story that really sets the stage for everything else.
Right. He starts with this totally normal Monday morning, looking for his sneakers, remembers he was playing drums in the guest house the day before. You know, just a regular start to the week.
Seems that way, right? But then he goes on to describe this, seemingly healthy lifestyle, workouts, hiking, even ran a marathon, just because.
Like, the guy's in shape. So imagine the shock when his doctor basically says, dude, at 38, you're on the fast track to a heart attack.
Talk about a wake-up call.
Yeah.
Right. And this is where it gets really interesting. It wasn't a lack of physical activity. It was the sheer stress stemming from his failing businesses.
His Fit Body Bootcamp franchise was in trouble, consulting gigs were drying up, and it was all taking a toll. It's that moment, sitting in the doctor's office, where he realizes, it's not them, it's me. Like, I am the common denominator in all these problems.
That's so crucial, isn't it? Because it would be so easy to blame external factors.
Yeah.
But owning it, admitting your role, that's where true change starts.
And that's what leads to his concept of manning up, but he's really clear it's not about some outdated macho stereotype.
Not at all. He actually reframes it as humaning up.
Yeah.
It's about constantly striving to be the best version of yourself. No excuses, no blaming others.
Okay, humaning up, I like that. Think of it as rejecting mediocrity. It's that commitment to continuous growth, maximizing your potential in every aspect of life.
And he really walks the walk, doesn't he? He went from this stressed out, almost failing entrepreneur to building a thriving empire. Absolutely. And it's all rooted in that human up mindset shift. He made a conscious decision to change his approach, and that changed everything. And for those of you listening, this whole reframing of responsibility and growth, it could be a real game changer, like one of those aha moments.
For sure. Okay, so we've got that foundation, right? Leading yourself first. But what does effective leadership actually look like in practice?
So Keuilian's really big on this idea that leadership is about action. It's not about your title. It's about how you show up every day.
Right, it's a how, not a what.
Exactly. He defines it as being visionary, a clear communicator, making decisions, keeping those emotions in check, and ultimately leading your team to win with the least amount of stress and chaos and wasted resources. It's about getting stuff done.
Outcomes, not just titles.
That's it. And, to illustrate this idea of overcoming adversity and taking charge, he shares his family's immigration story. It's pretty powerful.
Oh, yeah. Moving to a completely new country, 5 people living in a single room, his dad working 3 jobs. delivering papers, gas station, dishwasher. Like, that's a whole other level of work ethic.
It really is. And the sacrifices they made, the resilience they showed, it really emphasizes that resourcefulness, that grit. It's about making the most of what you have and never giving up.
And then, to add to all that, he talks about his brother getting robbed at gunpoint, not once, but twice, just to drive home the point of how tough those early years were.
It was about survival, you know? And then he talks about his own struggles, finding food in dumpsters, wearing clothes from the trash. It really puts things in perspective. And, he even mentions how he never really connected with traditional schooling. But then he talks about this job he had as a busboy at the Carnation Cafe in Disneyland.
Busboy? Wow. That sounds like a tough gig.
It was. Clearing tables, washing dishes all night. Not a lot of respect from some of the other staff. It wasn't glamorous. But here's the thing. He found a way to turn it into a challenge.
A challenge?
Yeah. He'd race himself to see how quickly he could clear a table, how efficiently he could mop the floor. It was all about optimizing those tasks.
So he was basically gamifying this grueling job, turning it into a competition with himself.
Exactly. And he says, even though he was exhausted and smelled like food all the time, he felt this sense of accomplishment.
It's about mindset, right? Choosing to find the challenge, even in the tough stuff.
Love that. So even as a busboy, he was building that foundation of efficiency, pushing himself.
Right. And then he talks about this guy, Jim, a gym owner. He was like an early role model for Keuilian when it came to leadership.
What made Jim stand out?
Jim had this presence, this confidence. He connected with people naturally. He was disciplined, but he also fostered this positive, joyful atmosphere in his gym.
Sounds like a great guy to work for.
He was. Keuilian even talks about Jim's Christmas parties, how much everyone genuinely enjoyed themselves. It was about genuine appreciation, And for Keuilian, it set a standard for what effective leadership could be. So setting a positive example, valuing your team, those were all crucial lessons he took from Jim. And then there's this concept of releasing the emergency brake. What's that all about?
That's about identifying those self-limiting beliefs that hold us back. That inner voice that says you're not good enough or you're going to fail. He even shares some of his own. Not smart enough, bad provider, won't ever succeed, not a leader.
Yeah.
We all have them, right?
Oh, yeah. It's so easy to get caught up in that negative self-talk. So how do you break free from that?
It's about consciously recognizing those thoughts and then actively challenging them. Are they actually true? What evidence do you have? He emphasizes the power of reframing those negative thoughts into something more positive and empowering.
Okay, so we've talked about leading yourself, right? Releasing that emergency brake. But then comes the part where you actually have to, do something, take action.
Right. And that's where fear comes in. Stepping outside your comfort zone is scary, but it's crucial for growth.
He tells this great story about creating his own event, the Fitness Business Summit. He got rejected from other established events, so he was like, fine, I'll do it myself. That's bold.
It was. Especially considering the financial risk. Plus, his wife was pregnant with their second child at the time. Talk about pressure.
So was it a huge success? Did it all work out perfectly?
He's honest about it. It wasn't a runaway hit. They basically broke even financially.
Yeah.
But the point was, they did it. And the fear he felt beforehand was way worse than any actual negative consequence. It's a great lesson. Often the anticipation of failure is worse than the failure itself.
It reminds me of that FDR quote, right? The only thing we have to fear is fear itself. Taking action, even when it's scary, that's where growth happens.
Absolutely. And then he talks about the importance of your team in life, but he defines it pretty broadly. It's not just employees. It's everyone in your life, everyone in your circle.
So friends, family, colleagues, everyone.
Yeah. He says you need to look at these relationships and ask yourself, are these people adding value or draining energy? Are they lifting me up or holding me back? It's about being really intentional about who you allow into your inner circle. And that applies to hiring too.
So don't just fill a position, make sure it's someone you're actually excited to have on the team. That's a good rule. Okay, so surround yourself with the right people. What else is key?
Hard work. He talks about the difference between just being busy, doing shallow work, and really digging deep.
Right, like Cal Newport's deep work, that focused, intense effort that leads to breakthroughs.
Exactly. And he ties this into a really important lesson he learned from his father. Always ask, what can I do to add value?
I love that question because it shifts the focus, right? It's not about what you can get, it's about what you can contribute. And he argues that when you focus on adding value, you will be rewarded in business and in life.
For sure. It's a guiding principle. Then he uses this fantastic analogy. He compares entrepreneurs to fighter jets versus crop dusters.
Now that's a visual. Explain that one.
So crop dusters, they just sort of assume success will come easily. Like, if I build it, they will come.
But that's not how it usually works, is it?
Nope. Fighter jet entrepreneurs, on the other hand, they're disciplined. They understand they're risk takers, problem solvers. They're constantly improving, building resilience. And a big part of that is building a great team.
It's like operating at a whole different level, right?
And he makes the point that great leaders, they're not just born that way, they develop those skills, which leads us to self-discipline.
Yeah, he's big on that. He compares entrepreneurs to high-performance cars. You got to take care of them, or they won't run well.
So regular maintenance is key. What are some of his tips for building that self-discipline?
He talks about finding a role model, someone who embodies a strong work ethic, like study what they do. Success leaves clues. And then he goes on to describe those ineffective leaders. Chaotic schedules, disorganized, no clear priorities. It's like they're running on fumes.
And he's not afraid to admit he struggled with this too, right? Oh, yeah. And he talks about this exercise, leaders take responsibility. Basically, you rewrite a story about a past failure, but this time, take full ownership of everything, even the things you might not have had direct control over. It's about shifting that perspective, moving from blame to empowerment.
I like that. And then he talks about protecting your morning magic time, right?
Absolutely. No email, no texts, no social media. Just focus on those high priority tasks. He even tells this story about his mentor, Craig, who basically challenged him to start waking up earlier, like incrementally, until he hit that 4:35 a.m. sweet spot.
Wow, that's dedication. But it makes sense, right? It's about starting your day strong, setting yourself up for success.
Totally. He calls it your starting ritual, like a mental pre-flight check.
Like a NASA launch sequence. I love that.
He actually breaks down his own morning routine, plans his top priorities the night before, never hits snooze, drinks tons of water, that just dives into that focused work. No phone, no distractions. It's all about that intentional structure. And that leads into the 5% rule.
Okay, what's that one?
This comes from a $5,000 mistake he made early on. He spent time fixing a leaky sprinkler instead of meeting with a potential coaching client. Basically, he was doing low-value tasks instead of focusing on what would actually grow his business.
So it's a reminder about prioritizing, right? Understanding the true value of your time.
Exactly. And it led him to create the not-to-do list. Identify those tasks that can be delegated so you can focus on your zone of genius. The stuff only you can do.
Love that. And then we get to decisiveness.
Oh, that's a big one. He says being decisive is so crucial for leaders. He gives all these examples, like even something as simple as deciding where to eat. The person who makes the decision, even if it's not perfect, they move forward.
Momentum over perfection.
Exactly. And he shares this story about Sarah, who was super indecisive. It was all rooted in negative self-talk. And then she realized she was feeding that negativity by consuming all this negative news.
So it's about managing your mental inputs too, right? What you allow into your mind. Totally. And he gives this 3-step method for breaking out of that cycle. Change your physical state, challenge those negative thoughts, and then reframe them into something positive.
Okay, I'm taking notes. So we've got decisiveness, and then we get into vision, right? Clarity of vision and a clear path.
Foundational stuff. He says if you don't know where you're going, why you're going there, and how you're going to get there, you're just going to wander around aimlessly.
He contrasts this with this guy, Jason, who just kind of drifted through life, ended up in a rough spot, and he really highlights that difference between existing and living with purpose.
Right. Even Jason's idea of joining the military, it was more about him, not about being part of something bigger. True purpose, Keuilian says, it's about connecting to something beyond yourself. Service, teamwork, making a real impact. And he talks about the early days of Fit Body Boot Camp. They were close to bankruptcy, and they had to get creative. They started licensing the model to trainers using empty gymnastics gyms. They made it work.
That's scrappy. Resourceful. It was. And this is where he challenges the idea that vision and purpose just come to you through meditation or something. He says it often comes from pain points, taking action, being obsessed with results. The real magic happens when you're in the trenches, figuring things out.
Imperfect action over perfect inaction.
Right. He even has this exercise, Elon Musk resiliency. Basically, imagine how Elon Musk would handle a major crisis in your business. It's about training your brain to think like a problem solver.
I like that, shifting your perspective. Okay, so we've got vision, taking action. What about partnerships?
Partnerships can be tricky. He talks about his early experiences, some good, some bad. He learned some hard lessons. He even has this warning. Most partnerships fail.
Why is that? What are some of the pitfalls?
Fear. Sometimes people get into partnerships because they're afraid to go it alone, or they don't do their due diligence, really vet the other person. He emphasizes self-belief,
Yeah.
you've got what it takes, and he suggests writing out what your ideal partner would look like. Really define what you need.
Then there's the story about buying out his struggling Fit Body Boot Camp franchise, even though it was losing money.
It was a huge risk. He felt this responsibility to the franchise owners who had invested in his brand, and after that, he had this massive anxiety attack. But it led him to a turning point, a moment where he decided to stop making excuses. That's when he really manned up, as he puts it.
So facing that fear head-on led to clarity.
It did. And it led him to create that clear vision for his business. He even shares the actual email he sent to his employees. Ambitious goals, specific targets. He wanted 2,500 Fit Body Bootcamp locations worldwide, 1,000 consulting clients. And it was all anchored in this purpose of helping millions of people get healthier.
Powerful stuff. And he says Joan, one of his employees, her response to that email was a turning point. It's like the team finally got on board with the vision.
And that's the power of communication, right?
Yeah.
Being clear about what you want to achieve. He encourages everyone to write out a vision plan for their business, for their life. Define your why.
And that's not enough, right? You need a path, a way to get there.
Yeah.
He talks about Michael, a successful author who was struggling to grow his consulting business.
Yeah. Michael had a vision, but he didn't have a clear path. So they created one together. Weekly videos, email marketing, building an interest list. It was all about translating that vision into action.
Concrete steps. And that leads us to the final piece, building a high-performance team.
Right. Think of it like a car race. Vision is the finish line, path is the course, team is the car, leadership is the driver. But what's the engine?
Good question. What drives the whole thing?
Work ethic, morale, culture. It's all about the people.
And he talks about having to distance himself from negative people, even if they were longtime friends, people who didn't support his vision or settled for mediocrity. That's got to be tough.
It is, but he says you have to be ruthless about your environment. Limit exposure to negativity, whether it's news, social media, or even certain people. You've heard that saying, show me your network and I'll show you your net worth.
Yeah, your environment shapes you.
Right. He even says you should only share your big dreams with positive, ambitious people. And don't be afraid to phase out those who aren't aligned with your vision. Negativity is contagious.
Yeah.
It's that crabs in a bucket thing, right? Dragging each other down. And he talks about the importance of a really solid outside team. Mentors, advisors, people you trust. Not just random friends, but people you've chosen for a reason.
Because they bring value, they challenge you, they support you. He tells this story about Crystal, one of his employees, who really grew just by being around Joan, another high-performing employee.
Yeah.
It's that osmosis effect.
Exactly. Environment matters. And then he talks about hiring and firing. It's not always easy, especially if you're a people pleaser, but he says it's crucial because people problems become business problems and vice versa.
No one likes to fire people, but sometimes it's necessary for the health of the team. He even has a specific principle, interview for culture, not competence. What's that all about?
It means you prioritize personality and fit over just skills. Skills can be learned, but a bad attitude that can poison the whole team. He says smart people can be goofballs and people without fancy degrees can be rock stars if they're in the right environment. And he details their hiring process at Fit Body Bootcamp. It's intense, multiple interviews, all about assessing cultural fit.
So it's about building that A-team, people who take ownership, who are proactive, no excuses. And he describes his current team as fighter jets, which ties back to that analogy.
Right. They're the engine that makes it all work. And a big part of that is morale. He says high morale is the glue that holds the culture together, might even be more important than the culture itself.
Interesting. How does he define morale?
It's the team's confidence, enthusiasm, and discipline. When morale is high, there's energy, there's purpose. When it's low, it's like everything's dragging.
Makes sense. And he actually gives 10 specific ways they build and protect morale at Fit Body Bootcamp.
Yeah. Monday morning team emails, team surprises. Tuesday, team meetings with a who am I game and shout outs for accomplishments. New employee culture meetings, a weekly name that tune game. Team lunches, team building activities like escape rooms, celebrating wins, big and small, investing in their team's growth, and most importantly, leading by example.
That's a lot of great ideas. And it all ties back to leadership, right? Setting the tone, creating that positive environment. Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the overall message you're taking away?
It's about that transformation, right? Keuilian went from near collapse to thriving by applying these principles: self-discipline, communication, decisiveness, resilience, vision, team building. It's all connected.
And he ends with that great line, never peak, the best is yet to come. It's that constant drive for growth, never settling.
Yeah. He even says, remember when is the lowest form of conversation. Don't dwell on the past. Focus on creating your future.
He's all about pushing forward, and he really stresses those two imperatives of manning up.
Holding yourself to the highest standards and achieving everything you're capable of.
No excuses. Taking ownership. It's a powerful message.
It is. And he ends by acknowledging the influence of these military leaders. Guys like Jocko Willink, Leif Babin, Chris Kyle. Their writings on leadership really shaped his thinking.
That makes sense. Those principles of service, discipline, decisive action, they resonate with his whole approach. And if you want to learn more, he's got his website, manup.com. He even offers a free leadership training course, so definitely check that out if you want to dive deeper.
Great resource.
Well, that's it for our deep dive into Man Up. Hopefully y'all found this valuable. Remember, you have what it takes to be a great leader. It's about developing those skills, building that team, and never stopping that pursuit of growth.
Until next time, keep leading, keep learning, keep growing.
And keep diving deep.